Good day everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In this video, we're going to talk about the digital business security challenges. My name is Gungu and welcome to channel Gungu Learning. Digital business, especially digital commerce, commences through a public network and thus creates a lot of risks. Such risk exposure are usually divided into two types of threats. Now, before we go to each of these threats, why does public networks becoming a risk? The reason is because on a public network, companies expose their confidential data, while their customers also expose their private data. And since those data are transferred or traveled to a public network, this means that anyone on the network can also gain access to such data. According to Turban et al., this vulnerability of public networks or the internet is actually one of the drivers for this internet or digital business risk exposures. Other drivers such as computers everywhere, or to be more exact, Internet of Things are everywhere. Everyone are connected to the internet with their own devices, and such devices actually represents oneself. So if I have a smartphone or smartwatch, this smartphone or smartwatch actually represents myself. All of my private data or confidential data are saved inside my smartphone and smartwatch. So this can also lead to an identity theft if my smartphone or smartwatch is stolen. The social networking explosion is also another driver. Social networking may lead to social re-engineering attacks, such as phishing. For more drivers, you can read Turban's book. Now that we know that digital business exposed to several risks, let's look at those two types of threats. The first one is the technical threats, and the second one is the non-technical threats. The categorization of those two types of threats are usually based on the targets of the attacks. Technical threats are those threats that came from the attacks to the digital business system, such as the information systems, the hardware, the software, the network, or even the database. Meanwhile, the non-technical threats are such attacks to people or human, which can be the customer or people inside the organizations, such as the managers, the employees, or anyone who works in the organization. The attacks to both the technical threats or the non-technical threats can actually be done in two modes of attacks. The first one is what we call the intentional attack, and the second one is the unintentional attacks. Intentional attacks are usually a deliberate attack that has a malicious intention. Meanwhile, unintentional attack can be from natural disasters, human errors, or computer malfunctions. In order for digital businesses to prevent from these attacks, they also need to set up their defenses. Since the threats are both technical and non-technical threats, then the defense should also be a technical defense and a non-technical defense. Such as, for technical defense, we can have an internal control that is specialized for the digital business and digital commerce. Meanwhile, for the non-technical defense, we can have the policies and regulations. Now let's look in detail on the technical threats. Technical attacks that can threaten the digital business can be in a lot of modes of attacks, such as from first, malware. Malwares are small applications that can threaten your systems. Some examples of malwares are viruses, worms, and Trojan horse. A virus is a small application that can modify the programming codes of an application. So this means that a system that is infected by a virus suffer from a deliberate malfunctions that made by the virus. Meanwhile, worms with a similar threat like a virus, however, worms can replicate themselves automatically and spread very fast through the network. And finally, Trojan horse also have the similar threatening characteristics like a virus, however, is hidden in a harmless application or make a look like of a harmless application, but when it is executed, it will harm the system. Some other methods of technical attacks are unauthorized access, for example, by hacking or cracking to a system, hijacking, such as cyber squatting, by copying a legitimate website and creates a false or fake website so that the users of the legitimate website will be fooled and go to the fake website. There's also a method called botnet, which is a tiny application that is automatically spread by the attackers through the internet. And it's kind of like a robot application that can automatically try to find vulnerabilities of the systems that are connected to the internet. This botnet can be threatening, for example, to Internet of Things devices such as smartwatch, home appliances that can connect through the internet like refrigerators, air conditionings, also washing machines that are IoT devices. This can be infected by botnets. And there's also what we call the key logging methods of attacks. Such attacks actually targets human who key logs their entry through a keypad or keyboard, such as skimmings on the automated teller machines. For non-technical threats, there are also a lot of attacking methods that targets the human behind the systems. Such attacks are usually generalized as a social re-engineering because it targets the human psychology. For example, phishing. Similar with phishing, it actually tries to target humans by giving them baits, such as sending them text messages that they won a prize, or sending them emails so that they will log in to their official bank accounts due to systems maintenance, and so on. So there are baits and fishes, which is human. That's why it's called phishing. Another type of attack are scams, or basically digital business or digital commerce scams. There are a lot of digital business scams. It's a bit similar with phishing, however, they usually target sensitive data, rather a username and password, but the sensitive data came from a private data from a customer, such as their name, their mother's maiden name, their date of birth, their social security number or national ID card number, and so on. For what? It can be deliberately, for example, identity theft or identity frauds. It can also be used for cyber banking robberies because they know their mother's maiden name, which is usually used for verifications to banks. There's also ransomware, which we will discuss on the presenting group discussion. There's also spam attacks, which is basically unsolicited mails or junk mails. And there's also spywares, which are tiny applications that monitors users without consent. And finally, data breach or data leaks that actually came because there's a social re-engineering. For example, cyber espionage. Digital businesses may be able to prevent and or control these attacks through two types of defense. The first one is assurance. By implementing an assurance framework such as from COSO or from COBIT. COSO framework is a generic internal control framework that can assure users of the systems that the information inside the information systems are controlled. Meanwhile, COBIT with their COVID-19 is also a framework of internal control. However, it is specialized for information technology related information, which is more suitable for the digital business. Secondly, digital business can also set up a 3-layer defense mechanisms. The first layer is defense for their confidential data and of course customers' private data by first using access control, so only authorized personnel can gain access to such data, including the customers or managers or other employees inside the digital business that has the authority to access and modify the company's confidential data or even the customer's private data. Data can also be secured by using an encryption, using public key infrastructure and or private key infrastructure. The second defense layer is on the digital business's network. Companies or the digital business can use firewalls or a kind of digital gates that prevent unauthorized users from coming through the public network to the companies or the digital business intra-network. The digital business can also set up the VPN or virtual private network that we have discussed on our previous meeting. The third layer is the general control and social engineering control. General control includes the physical control and administrative control. For example, we put the digital business's server inside a secured area that is isolated and cannot be directly accessed by anyone. Meanwhile, the social engineering control includes protection against spams, phishing, spyware, and also including cyber wars. Other than these defense mechanisms, digital businesses also needs to set their recovery mechanisms in case attacks actually occur. This includes backups. Can be an on-site backup or an off-site backup. An on-site backup basically a backup of the digital business systems on the premise of the digital business site. Meanwhile, an off-site backup is a backup of the digital business system out of the premise of the digital business site. For example, out there on an island somewhere. That is all that we can discuss for the topics. For further details, we can discuss it on our synchronized session. Thank you very much for your attention. I'll be seeing you guys on the next video. Good day. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.